Hey, it's Attorney Joe with Bowers, your accident and injury guy. Last week on this podcast, we talked about how your settlement money is tax free, but if you want to make it grow, you might have to pay taxes on it. And I promised you we would have a talk about a way to make it grow a lot and not pay taxes. Here we are on this week's Monday Morning Lawyer. Happy Monday, everybody. It is your accident and injury guy right here from my Elkton office. Before we get into this week's topic, I want to let everybody know, if you are watching, and I'm seeing people starting to pop in on the live feed now, be sure to drop a comment like some people already are. Wonderful, wonderful. Good morning. I need you to drop a comment with your name in there so I have your name. I can see how many people are watching, but I can't see who. So I need you to drop a comment. We get 5 or more, and here's $50 at the grocery outlet here in Elkton, gift cards for you, which is super cool because they are running a promotion this month. And this, you don't need to win this contest today to enter into this promotion. Just go download their app, because if you have their app and you get it between now and tomorrow, you get $15 off of a purchase of $75 or more, which means if you do win the $50 worth of gift cards today and use this app, that means you're getting $75 worth of groceries for $10 of your own money. That's kind of crazy, but it's really great. So make sure you're commenting, put your name in there. At the end of the show, as long as we've had 5 people pop in there, we're going to give away these gift cards. If not, we're going to roll in the next week. So last week we talked about taxes and your settlement money, and how with these accident cases, the money that you're receiving, you are not paying taxes on it. And I made a side comment about, hey, if you invest it somewhere and you make a ton of money on it, you might have to pay taxes on that. There are ways that you don't have to. And again, talk to your financial advisor. Maybe we'll get one on here in the future. But here is a way to make your money grow in a guaranteed way. And I mentioned this last week, and I said we'd have a guest, and we do have a guest, to make your settlement money grow and grow a lot and not have to pay taxes on it. And that is a structured settlement. So I want to bring a colleague in here who's been doing structured settlements close to a decade. I have worked with her countless times. I mean, I'm sure that she could count, and I could dig through the records and count. We could figure out the number, but off the top of my head, I don't know how many times I've worked with my good friend and colleague, Joanna Wines. Good morning, Joanna. How are you?
Good morning, Jobeth. Thank you for having me today.
So the big topic.
You're right. We have.
And I'll start this by prefacing how I shoehorned this into the conversation from last week. Although these structured settlements are good for far more than what I mentioned. However, not to get political, we are on the eve of a presidential election, and one of the topics that is a conversation of every presidential election is taxes. And again, from the politics standpoint, we're going to keep it at that level and go no further. When people receive their accident money, as we talked about, their settlement proceeds after everybody's been paid and everything, that money is on its face tax-free. However, if you go and buy a bunch of investment stuff, whether it be taxes or whatever, or stocks or bonds or real estate, the gains that you get on those things, generally speaking, become taxable. You have a method, you have a product that you work with. Again, and we'll get into some of the other uses for it, but one of the ones that I like to tell people who are getting a lot of money, and typically, and this is not necessarily for everybody, it's not certainly not for every situation, but when I have clients who I know that they're going to receive in their pocket close to 6 figures, it's something that I discuss with them, because sometimes it's like, hey, I'm going to go buy a house. So you have in your mind how you're going to invest and make this money stay around for you. But other times you don't. And I know that I've had some clients over the years where it's like, look, I'm getting 100K, and I don't, whatever the number is, but we're just going to use that and play around with it. It'd be nice to have a little bit of money, but I'd love to make this money grow in a way. And I always suggest to them a structured settlement, because you can shear off like in that scenario of, let's say there's 100K, you could say, look, I'm going to take $20,000 now, $30,000 now, because, you know, I want to get a new car. I want to do this, or I want to do that, or there's some renovation projects that I have an idea of how I'm going to use this money. But the others, I'd like to see that grow, and of course do so tax-free. So tell us a little bit more about the basics. Let's start at the beginning.
That sounds great. Well, thank you very much again for having me. And the structured settlement, like you said, it is a special type of investment that is just for people who are getting personal injury settlements, workers' compensation, or wrongful death settlements. So it's not so widely known. Structured settlements aren't widely known amongst the public. Even a ton of financial planners and advisors don't really know what they are or how to use them. What happens with the structured settlement is it actually becomes a term of the settlement agreement. So anytime a case gets settled, there's something called a settlement agreement or settlement agreement and release, or release, you know, just depending on what people I'm working with are calling them, or what that document's going to be called. And we actually have to put the terms of the structured settlement into the document. Now, with the structured settlement, I think a lot of people think it's just a basic annuity that can only pay out monthly payments over somebody's life or something like that. I have a lot of lawyers I work with who do work with babies who have massive brain injuries and things like that, and they do need lifelong payments because they're going to need lifelong care and they're never going to be able to work. But I have plenty of people who are getting auto accident settlements, and maybe they fractured their leg and they did have to have surgery, but they're, you know, doing fairly well now and they are getting six figures. And like you said, Joe, but they don't have necessarily immediate needs, or, you know, they have a house. They're, you know, their lives obviously were seriously interrupted by whatever injury, but they've mostly made a recovery. So their needs are maybe, you know, not as long term. And I have individuals who maybe they're retirement age and they want to have they want to use the structured settlement as sort of their conservative investment, because the rates of return are guaranteed and tax-free. Right now, in the current economic climate, I'm finding most of the structures are paying out about 4.5%, which is the equivalent of getting about 6% in the market, but without any risk. The structures, they are placed with life insurance companies, and the life insurance companies that I work with, they've been around for, you know, 200 years. So it's a really safe and secure investment. But like I said, there's so many different ways that you can design a structure. So I've had 20-year-olds who, you know, maybe they want to take half their settlement now because they're in college and they, you know, they want to get a car and they want to help with their tuition. But they also know that they're still at a vulnerable age and they don't want undue influence from friends or family members. And they just know they don't really necessarily need to have all the money at that time. So maybe they defer their payments. They get, you know, half of the rest in 5 years and half of that remainder 10 years from now. Or maybe they put it all away until they're 30 and get, you know, a 20-year-old gets a big lump sum payment the day they're 30, which would be their investment plus that tax-free guaranteed interest. And that's the down payment for their house. And then,
so talk to me. And again, I know that this changes all the time, and at the time that you give quotes, that's pulling money from or data from the market at the time. But
sure,
on average, let's say that somebody puts a chunk of money into a structured settlement, and it's hey, I want this money to disappear and come back to me in 10 years.
Sure.
Ballpark me. What kind of return are they expecting on that money over a 10-year span?
I would say probably close to 5% tax-free guaranteed, which would be, like I said,
that's
about
per year.
Yes. So it's a 5% compounding growth. And so it would, you know, there would be significant growth in that 10 years when you get that lump sum out. I also have a popular plan that I find amongst younger adults, but who are not minors, is a plan where they get monthly payments. Basically, maybe they put $100,000 into the structured settlement, and for 10 years, they get monthly payments, which are the interest payments, basically. And then they get their $100,000 back that they invested in a lump sum when they're a bit older. So they've had the benefit of, having some help when you're, traditionally people aren't earning as much money in their 20s as they are going to be later in their life. And then when they're mature, they get back their lump sum payment, and, maybe then they're ready to reinvest, or they just start a business, buy a house, or they have babies and they want to start their, 529s. So structures do provide really good security and flexibility for all different stages of life.
And that's one of the coolest things, that I get to talk about with clients before connecting them with you about really digging into kind of the nitty-gritty. Is I tell clients all the time, I said, look, there are so many different ways to do this. And I typically will draw upon examples that I have found interesting, or just the generic stuff that previous clients have done in the past. The standard, like, hey, let's do 3 payments at 25 and 30 and 35, and it's chunked up that way, the age 25, 30 and 35. Yeah. Which a lot of those I see when a minor has to throw money from a settlement into something that's going to protect it until a certain age, because they can't just have that money cut straight to them because they're a minor. Then again, in past years, we've had clients that have looked into, and some who have jumped onto the concept of, hey, I want to kick this out a certain amount of time, and then I want guaranteed monthly money for 20 years, 30 years, the rest of my life. I know you have products that do that, which are really amazing. But the concept, this is the first time that we've talked about it, of taking a chunk of money and saying, hey, I'm going to take that money when I'm 50, when I'm 60, whatever, but pay me monthly what ultimately ends up being the interest payments until you pay me that money. So it's basically making that money work for you by paying you, I would imagine, a couple $100 a month. We're not talking about retirement money here. We're not big time in it with this money, but imagine having, I mean, everybody, if you say $200 or $300, everybody's got something in mind that costs them that much on their budget sheet each and every month. So imagine being able to take your settlement money, kick it out to when you think you're going to retire, or maybe 10 years before you're going to retire. And now that bill, whatever it is, whether it's, your cell phone bill and your internet bill at home or whatever, or your gas money or groceries or whatever, again, everybody's got their own budget, and be like, that's kind of offset until I hit retirement age. And then I still have $100K waiting for me, and I paid $0 in taxes on the whole thing.
Yeah.
Which is fantastic. Awesome.
Yeah. And I think people love that plan. And like I said, especially the young 20 somethings who I'm talking to, they don't necessarily know what their future holds. They don't know, as a lot of us didn't, what we wanted to do when we were in our early 20s. And they know they do want to make a smart decision, but they don't want to commit the money, away for their life. And so that plan does help. And like I said, I know at least when I was, before I got into the settlement industry, I was a personal injury medical malpractice attorney, but I was an associate at a firm, and I was not making very much money, and I lived in an expensive city. And for me to have had, if I would have had $300 more a month to pay my cell phone bill and help with my car payment, oh my gosh, that really at that time in my life would have been a huge game changer for me, and would have just made things so much easier. Maybe I wouldn't have eaten ramen noodles every night for dinner at that, at that time. But yeah, I think it's, it's a cool tool. And I appreciate when attorneys give their clients the option, because with a structure, it can only be done at the time of settlement. So I don't know how many people listening are attorneys versus how many people are, the public who might be personal injury victims in the future. I hope they're not, or they're in the middle of a lawsuit now. But for the attorneys who are listening, if you haven't worked with a structured settlement consultant before, make sure you get us involved, before the case settles, before the release is signed, before the checks are cut, because the IRS, to provide these protections, do require these certain steps. And I think, again, it's good to, if you know that case is about to settle and there's going to be this money, just have a conversation about it, or have a conversation with me or somebody else, just to give your client the option, because it is that one-time shot. And then again, for anyone who's listening who has a personal injury suit, your lawyer might not mention a structured settlement to you, because not every attorney knows about them, or there are, I think, a lot of misconceptions that they can only be used for the really large and catastrophic cases, like those brain injury cases. So, the more people who are in your shoes know about it, then they can advocate for their needs with the lawyer. It doesn't cost anything to engage someone like myself to come up with structured settlement proposals or help out. I get compensated through the life companies if the structured settlement gets placed. If it doesn't matter. I don't get paid, just like your attorney doesn't get paid if they don't settle the case, but that's perfectly fine. So again, it's just about making sure that, there is public awareness about this option, and, people know how to use this tool if it would be of benefit.
Yeah. I mean, it's super powerful stuff. And you mentioned attorneys, you do these all over the country, correct?
Yes, I do.
So there could be an attorney in whatever state that's seeing this. Feel free to reach out, contact Joanna. If you want to talk to me, my phone number's down here. If I could point in the right direction, there we go. And my email address is up top. Feel free to reach out. I'm happy to talk to you about my experiences with this stuff and how we've used this to help clients shield money, protect money. It's great if your state has a requirement like Maryland does for minors and having to protect money, either putting it into a trust. You put it in a trust, it's not going to do anything. It's just going to sit there. And if there's any movement on it before age 18 or 21, you're going to end up paying fees to access that money. Whereas here, you've got guaranteed growth. It's obviously at a little bit more of a conservative rate than if you're out there, playing the market, so to speak. But if you add in the fact that you're not paying income tax on the gains, and you're going to get the gains, the cool thing, and the thing that I tell my clients all the time, is that you've got to make the decision up front. But once you do, it is guaranteed to pay the amount that's on the page on the day that's on the page. And you can put your head on the pillow and don't have to worry about the market going crazy. If the market goes crazy bad, you still get your money. Exactly. If the market goes crazy good, you're not going to get extra. That's a trade-off, but that you're getting the gains that you're getting, and you're getting them tax-free. So that's super important. I got some new people that are in here watching. I want to encourage you guys to drop your name or drop some sort of comment into the chat or in the comments feature. We've got 3 people entered. I need 5. I want to do this drawing. Otherwise, we're just going to push it again until next week, which is just, it's great tension. I'm sure the grocery outlet loves me talking about them every week. So make sure you throw yourself in the comments here, because we're getting near the end of this one. What are some other ways that something wacky and off the wall? What's the craziest thing or the most unique thing that you've seen somebody use a structured settlement for?
Thank you. That's a great question. I did one earlier this year that it was somebody, she was 90, and her kids were her POAs. And I think people looked at me like I was crazy to do a structured settlement for a 90-year-old. But what happened was she was getting her, she was on Medicare, and her premiums were at a certain level, and she was getting her, mandatory retirement distributions. And if she had invested the structure in a taxable vehicle, then that taxable income would have put her over the level for whatever Medicare premium she was paying, and her Medicare premiums would have gone up. And so in that case, her family they really just wanted to avoid having her Medicare premiums go up when she didn't need this money. So they had it set for a few years down the road for her. So I thought that was really interesting. This is totally not personal injury, but for the first time, I'm working on a family law settlement, the property division. So we're able to do that tax-free. We're working right now on a bill to extend these provisions to sexual abuse and sexual assault cases, which are unfortunately a little bit more of a gray area than auto accident cases. But I would say those are sort of the different things I've done. I mean, I've had parents who they get in accidents and they've, again, they injured their leg and they had surgery, but now they're back to work and they don't necessarily have any urgent, pressing financial needs. And they might want to have the money structured to come out to them in the years that their children would be in college. So they're kind of looking at this as their children's college fund. But those are just some of the different, unique circumstances I've had of late.
Now, one thing that you mentioned that brought up something that I always like to bring up to clients, especially when we're talking about, hey, let's kick this money for 10 years and then give me a monthly payment for the rest of my life, which I was obviously reminded of because you were talking about somebody who is 90 entering into one of these settlements. These are insurance backed, life insurance backed specifically. So there's a point that no matter what happens to you, this money is guaranteed.
Right.
So let's talk about a scenario. Let's say that we'll just say me, for example.
Sure.
I'm kicking $100,000 down the line until I turn 50. When I turn 50, I want a monthly payment for the rest of my life. What happens if I die at 52?
So if you die at 52,
hopefully I'm not jinxing myself and putting any foreshadowing in there of life, but what happens if I die at 52?
So what I usually do if I'm doing a lifetime payout, I have, we set what's called a period certain. So we'll have a certain period of time that, the funds are guaranteed. So maybe we would set, and that's usually a break even point. So JoBeth, if you say, let's start it at 50 years, I might run it as like a 20 or a 30-year guaranteed period with a lifetime rider on it, essentially. And then what would happen is if you passed away at 52 and you had 18 years of payments remaining, because we did a 20-year period certain. For those 18 years, your payments would go to whomever you name as beneficiaries. And we always send out beneficiary designations. But conversely, with a plan like that, if you're, now we did a 20-year period, which brings you to 70, and now you're 71 and you're still alive. And now you're 100 and you're still alive. You're still getting those payments.
Still getting those payments.
Until you take that last breath. Now, for people listening, obviously the monthly payment that you get is going to be smaller when you have that lifetime guarantee than if you just did a 20-year, straight period. But for a lot of people, they love knowing that they have that certainty that as long as they're alive and as long as their bills are coming into their house, which I think everyone is going to have bills until they die, that they're going to have payments until they die, as well. So I know that's morbid, but I guess that's the world that we live in, and we do, there are things that are inevitable.
Hey, next week on the podcast, we're talking about estate planning. So, what we're talking about here occasionally touches upon death. What we're talking about next week is just death, and then what happens afterwards. So, it's okay. We could be a little morbid here. Unfortunately, we kind of have to. It's a occupational sort of hazard, if you will. So awesome. Really great information. Again, if you are in a situation where you've got a bunch of money coming from you and you want to see it grow, guaranteed, you want payments for the rest of your life, whatever it is, have your attorney reach out to Joanna. And if the attorney has no idea what you're talking about, have them reach out to me and I'll guide them on how it's worked for many, many, many of my clients, and will work for many, many more. Looks like we are coming to the end of our time here. Any last thoughts? I'm going to encourage everybody there. We've got the 5 names, so we're good. I received a text from a friend who is actually watching on YouTube and can't comment, so I added him in there. But other than that, anybody else? Last call for entering the contest. We are going to do this drawing this morning. Joanna, any last thoughts about structured settlements?
No, but I just urge everyone, if they have questions, to give us a call. Can I share my information?
Oh yeah, please do.
Oh, sure. So so I'm with Sage Settlement Consulting and Joanna Wines Settlements. My email is jwynes@sagesettlements with an s on the end.com. And my number is 443-326-2549. So just feel free to reach out.
One more time with that number, 443.
443-326-2549.
Excellent.
And so just feel free to reach out if you ever have any questions. But thank you everyone for your time, and I hope everyone has a great week on this Monday.
Excellent. Wonderful. Joanna, thank you for joining us. Her information's at the bottom. I'm going to let you get back to the rest of your day. I'm going to pop you off of here again. Thanks so much. And then her information's still at the bottom while I go to set up our drawing to see. We've got 5 names in. I'm seeing no new comments, so last call is gone. We've got $50 to the grocery outlet. Hopefully this is showing up on your screen. I'm going to click this thing and spin it. And somebody is about to win 50 bucks. Oh, this is looks like Kevin, who I believe actually won a couple of weeks ago. Awesome. We're going to kick that out of there. Perfect. So congratulations to Kevin. It pays to show up. It pays to show up week in and week out. If your name's on the wheel, you have a chance to win the prize, and you can win multiple prizes. As you've seen, Kevin won some Flyers tickets a couple weeks back. Next week, as I mentioned, this is super important, and I thank anybody who stuck around to the very end of this episode. We have a special guest coming on to talk about estate planning. Obviously not something that I do, but super important. We have a guest coming to talk about estate planning, but also part of that is next week, Wednesday. That is November 13th in my office. Our guest next week is actually doing consultations, free consultations to explore your estate planning options. Okay, so there's no obligation to buy anything or pay for any services, but you're going to kind of talk about your situation in there and what you might want to do, whether that is as simple as a will and other basic estate planning documents to really complicated stuff. She's going to be able to handle all of it. We will have a link to that in next week's episode. If you want to secure one of those spots, because it looks like we have about 5 or 6 spots left throughout the course of the day. These are 30-minute consults. Send me an email. You want to fast track that, not wait till next week. If you are a former client of mine or a current client of mine, you've already received an email about it with the link. But shoot me an email right here. Say, hey, I want info on the estate planning seminar, or not seminar, consultations, and I will send you the link. That way you can sign up. Otherwise, it will be here for the podcast next week as we talk about it. So that is all for this week. Thank you for tuning in. A little bit of a longer but super important one, and we finally got to get rid of these give away these gift cards. So congratulations to Kevin. Again, every Monday, 10 a.m. live streamed here on Facebook and YouTube. And if there is a topic that you've got questions about or want us to discuss here, as you've seen, if it's not something I do directly, I bring in a guest who knows what they're talking about. Again, estate planning. I don't know much about it at all. I know enough to have passed the bar and to get where I am, but I don't deal with it on a daily basis. It comes into play in just a handful of my cases on an annual basis. And I've got an expert coming in to talk about it. So again, thanks everybody for tuning in. Be safe out there, be well, and we'll see you next week.